A presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the last presidential election, Atiku Abubakar, has raised the alarm over alleged plots by the ruling All Progressives Congress to compromise Nigeria's judiciary processes and undermine the country's democracy. In a swift response, the presidency declared that the APC and President Bola Tinubu will in no way undermine the judiciary in resolving the presidential election petitions before it. The APC described Atiku's allegation as hollow, wild, mischievous, and an attempt by the former vice president to float an alibi to deflect the shame of a highly probable defeat at the election petitions court. Atiku, in a statement signed by his media advisor, Paul Ibe, on Saturday, stated that since the conclusion of the presidential election last February, there have been unfortunate developments that are saddening to many Nigerians. Well, let's now turn to the executive director of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, Awal Ibrahim Musa, for a conversation on the need to protect the judiciary from politics and politicians and ways to go about it. Good afternoon and thank you for joining us here on Newsday.
Good afternoon, viewers.
Well, thank you. Let's just start with the basics. Tell us about how important it is to protect the judiciary from politics and politicians alike.
Thank you very much. It is very important for our judiciary to be protected against those politicians who will want to undermine and subvert the rule of law and also subvert the wishes of the Nigerian people. So it is important that we have a judiciary that is not biased, that is not seen to be commercialized, that is also not being to be populated by politicians and their agents. Because if you have doubts about the credibility of the judiciary, it means that you will be compromising the merits, the ethics of the judges and the court itself. So that is why judicial corruption must be discouraged in an attempt to ensure that we deepen rule of law, we deepen justice, we deepen and consolidate democracy. If we allow politicians to use our judiciary and our justices to push for their own self-centered interests against the ethics and the conduct of judiciary and justice itself, we will actually have a serious repercussion. So it is important that politicians stay away from, inducing our justices and also, staff of judiciary from, supporting them or getting them to do anything that will tantamount to compromising justice. Otherwise, you're going to have two sets of justices. You will have one for the rich men who have, unquestionable access of money, and then the poor people who only depend on what should be fair and free to them. So that's why we must do everything possible to protect our justice or judiciary and justices from being part of politicking that Nigerian politicians are doing. Because sometimes when you allow this thing to happen, it will compromise, even the confidence that Nigerians are having that they can have access to justice and that they can be treated fairly whenever there's any case. So it is important under democracy that our judiciary stay away from anything that will stain its own credibility and image. Right now, many Nigerians are having doubt about our judiciary at lower and higher level, and we must do everything possible to save and safeguard our judiciary and our justices. That is why justices, before they are appointed to any election tribunal, they must be properly scrutinized, they must be properly screened, so that Nigerians know that they are not cash and carry people, and they are not people that can compromise the truth about whatever issue that to be discussed. It is important that our judicial officers remain, and maintain high level moral superiority of integrity. This is why we think that if we are able to protect our judiciary, we should be able to restore hope and confidence on Nigerians to believe in our judiciary, to believe in our justices. Otherwise, it will be extremely difficult for Nigerians to have faith on our judiciary.
Well said. Now, when it comes to universally applicable concepts and perspectives of law, are we truly practicing separation of powers in the legislative, executive, and judicial functions of government in Nigeria?
The truth is that the kind of democracy we are operating, even though that is not what we fought for, some of us who fought for democracy in this country, we passed the military to ensure that there was total demilitarization of the military, guys. When some opportunist politicians hijack power, they are using it for their own self-centered interests, and therefore, even the separation of power between judiciary, legislature, and the executive, you will hardly see it happen. For example, at the state level, it is governors. At the federal level, it is the president that appoints even those justices. So they decide to stab them when they are not, on their own side, and whenever they decide to fund them, they will be giving them peanuts. That is why we have been canvassing for truly independence of both the legislature and the judiciary, so that they can function, responsibly, independently, and display sense of fairness and justice in the work that they're doing. But if the legislature has to rely on the executive to, carry out its own activities, especially at the state level, you will see that they are not in the position to checkmate the excesses of the executive. At the judicial level, you will see that it is still the governors that decide and fund them. And I think it is absolutely wrong if you allow the executive to be the one to be doing everything under democracy, then you will not be able to have separation of power that can help to reinforce and consolidate democracy and guarantee justice in the country, because already one is more superpower than the two arm of the government. And I think under democracy, which we believe should be practiced in Nigeria truly, the tenet of democracy requires that we should have division of labor. Namely, we should have judiciary, you should have legislature, you should have the executive, each one of them playing its own role according to our constitution. But what we see now, the executive has become superpower that dictates and control what happens. So despite the fact that the judiciary, some of the people in the judiciary, they try to do their best, but they are still constrained because the executive is overpowering, is overpower, as well as the legislature, which is almost in some states, the legislature is virtually in the pocket of governors. At the national level, you could see that even at the national level, some of the legislators cannot even freely and openly speak their mind because they are afraid, they are scared that the executive may come after them through all sorts of forms, especially if the executive appears to have an advantage of information that can nail them down. That is why it is important we have people with impeccable character in the judiciary and the legislature, so that the executive will not use that as an excuse to undermine them and cover up for them when they want to do certain things. It is important we have people with honesty, sincerity, with moral, with integrity, with capacity and patriotism to be in our judiciary, to be in our legislature. But if you have cash and carry people, definitely the executive will continue to have its way.
Well, since we're on the subject of, of separation, as at last month when the RMAFC recommended a 114% increase for the federal and state government workers, there was also some clamor to ensure that judicial officers are not placed in the same category as political office holders. I'd like to know your stance on this.
We have always advocated that we must have proper remuneration to our judicial officers, because if you leave them in abject poverty, this politician would definitely use their poverty situation to come and corrupt them by giving them opportunities privileges and even cash donation, as we are seeing. But if you are reasonably giving them what they deserve to be given in order to be able to sit and be fair, to cases, then it will be difficult for them to do that. However, they can also be observed and monitored. Their conduct and behavior can be observed and monitored. If you are a judge and suddenly some crazy millions of dollars and pounds and naira are found in your account or in your disposition, then probably there's need to observe and see how comes that happens. But you must take care of them so that there will not be excuses or room for them to compromise. But after you have done that and they are still compromising, politicians are still finding their way to them, then I think such kind of people they do not deserve to sit under such kind of sensitive cases that will require impartiality, that will require total neutrality, that will require fear of God to take decision. But if you have such kind of judges that are notorious in terms of collecting bribe to carry out decision or justice or judicial pronouncement, like we've seen in so many cases in this country, you have so many contradictory statements coming or judicial pronouncement coming from different judges. I think there should be some kind of harmonization on some of these issues so that it will not give room for some judges to be contradicting what should be really real justice pronouncement.
Noted, Mr. Rafsanjani. Now, in a write-up by Aki Oshuntoku, he stated that there will always be bad eggs in any institution or organ of government, including the judiciary. He also stated that a situation of crisis arises where the bad eggs become the rule rather than the exception. Based on your assessment, I'm wondering what point we are right now when it comes to our assessment of the judiciary. Are we at a point where we have a crisis?
So, as a matter of fact, we have a huge crisis. The various, courts you have in this country, from magistrate to, customary court to, up to Supreme Court, Nigerians are having reservation on our own judges and our courts, judicial staff, and this is not good. If you cannot trust our judiciary and the judicial officer, then that's really a big problem, because we need to make sure that we have a body that if we are aggrieved, if we go there, we can get justice. But if you are in the first place blocked from accessing the justice, then that's a big challenge. And I can tell you that many judicial officials, especially at lower courts, what they do is an open corruption that they do. And citizens must monitor them, must report them, and the National Judiciary Council must take proactive measure to deal decisively with any corrupt judges or administrative staff of judiciary. Because if you don't do that, you will erode confidence of Nigerians on our judiciary, and we don't want that to be happening, because you will be promoting anarchy, you will be promoting violence if citizens feel that they cannot access justice or they cannot get justice from the situation they find themselves. So it is important. They are holding a very sensitive and very important position, and position of trust. Therefore, they must not compromise because of money or because of privileges that some of the government official or politician or powerful individual will give them. We don't want people to be procuring justice against oppressed and repressed Nigerians who, simply because they don't have money to pay bribe, then they are now being completely put under trouble. You have so many Nigerians in a waiting trial. In fact, as a matter of fact, the number of Nigerians in prison waiting for trial clearly demonstrates the injustice that is going on in our judicial system. Some people spend 20 years, 25 years not even attended to. If you continue with such kind of system, definitely the rate of injustice will be too much. By the time you kept somebody 20 years or 15 years in the prison, and you come out to find out that he had no even case or she has no case, you have inflicted incredible injustice on him or on her. So that is why we need speedy, dispensation of justice. We need to make sure that our judges are also equipped, provided with all the necessary facilities and equipment, and also remuneration, so that they can sit down and do their work. But if you continue the analog way you are doing now, you will continue to create more confidence crisis on Nigerians, on our judicial system, not only on the election issue, but also on other aspects of life. And that is why it's important. And we in civil society, we are out there demanding and advocating for judicial sector reforms because of the corruption that has undermined the effectiveness, the fairness, the sincerity, and the honesty in judgment that many of the judges are giving. That's why CISLAC, Transparency International, and many other civil society organizations are clamoring for judicial sector reforms in this country in order to restore confidence on the Nigerian people.
Duly noted, Mr. Rafsanjani. Now, when it comes to remuneration, like you glazed over just a moment ago, I'd like to know what your take is on the Nigerian Bar Association's memo to the RMAFC that judicial officers should be remunerated according to an independent salary scale to be known as the Judicial Service Pay Scale, JSPS. Would that make a significant difference in any way?
Absolutely. I want to believe that the NBA have done research to see what other comparative advantages are in order to protect our judiciary and our justice from being victim of corrupt politicians who are looking for slightest opportunity to corrupt them, or powerful individuals that are oppressing and repressing the Nigerian people. So I think their memo is in order, and when we do that, we must also continue to monitor the conduct of our justices. If we find anybody that is doing things that is unethical, National Judiciary Council must take proactive measure to discipline such kind of person, so that there will not be room for anybody to create uncertainty or to create a kind of displeasure in the administrative of justice in Nigeria. So they need to be given the necessary support to be able to be independent, to be able to take decision that is actually seen to be fair, and also people to have also access to justice in Nigeria. If we do that and we monitor their own, also, if you like, their wealth, it will be also, because we need to make sure that if you are a judge and you are having this kind of millions and millions of dollars in your account, you are not known to be a businessman or a businesswoman, and you are having this kind of huge amount of money, probably there's need for you to explain and justify why you are having such kind of money. So if you are not being proactive to be checkmating that, and I think the judiciary itself should be able to have that monitoring thing on its own people, so that there will be sanity and conduct, and also people will be scared to do things because they know they can be exposed.
Very well said, Mr. Rafsanjani. Now, I'd like to expand this, a bit. When one looks at the treatment of judges, it's not necessarily a very glamorous picture. For instance, remaining on the same salary for 15 years, also cases like what you mentioned. Are you concerned that such perception could deter those who actually aspire to be part of the judiciary or judicial system from pursuing such aspirations?
No, it is also part of the deliberate, and calculated attempt by the system, which, clearly exposes and throw, many judicial, officials to this temptation. Because if you are not taking care of them, and somebody, comes and he provide houses for you, cars, expensive car, take you to holiday, give you some of this crazy money that they are sharing, you'll be tempted, because you are not being, given what you are deserve to be given as a judge or as a worker. because it's not only the judges, but also usually the Nigerian workers, because you can see that in many states they are struggling to pay 30,000 minimum wage. Some of the governors have looted their state, have run away, and they have not paid salary for 8 months, for 6 months, and that is very wicked of them. And in order to avoid such kind of thing, we need to have a system that is automatic, that it is, system of also reward and punishment. If you are recruited to be a judicial officer or to be a judge, you must be given proper terms, and reference of and condition of service that will enable you to function as a not only judge but as a decent human being. But the way we have been practicing in this country is that you give people peanuts and they spend 6 months, 3 months looking for their monthly salary. You are exposing them to danger of termination, and that is why we need to block the leakages, because it's not as if there's no money to pay them. It's just that the money has been squandered, stolen, diverted by some wicked public official. If you see the extravagancy that is going on within, the arms of government, you would see that the problem is not the resources, it's the management of the resources. And unfortunately, sadly, they continue to do this. Even as we enter the new dispensation of the new government, 2 months ago now, you see the lifestyle of the executive and the legislature have not changed. In fact, it has even doubled, because you see them buying expensive cars that you don't see in any European country. Even in America, you don't see, simply because you are a legislator or you are an appointee. Then you now corner, what you are not supposed to, and you are even doing it with impunity. I think there's no way we can sustain that kind of justice system of remuneration if we continue to do this. So many security officers are not being paid. So many of them, they are treated like, as if they are not human beings. That is why some of them, they don't care. They will just allow the crooks and criminals to take over our communities, our society, because they don't want to die. Because if they die, to even get their entitlement, they have to pay bribe. Their families have to pay bribe to collect their entitlement. We need to kill corruption in this country. If you want to have a if you want to have a sustainable democracy in this country, sustainable, rule of law, you must kill corruption. If you allow corruption, corruption has a greater ramification and consequences, and that is where we find ourselves today, where we are, from the economic to the education to the healthcare system to the infrastructure, everything, to the value system, to the judiciary, access to justice, everything. Corruption has undermined and overfloated that, and we must rise up as responsible, patriotic Nigerians to do everything that is possible within our disposal at any level we find ourselves, to make sure that we deal decisively with corruption and discourage corrupt people. We cannot be buying appointment. People are buying appointment in this country at the state and the national level. Even ordinary students, coppers who have finished work, who have finished NYC, they have been told to pay bribe to get a job. We cannot continue to run a country like that. That is why we dedicated our life to make sure that we pursue justice in this country and consolidate democracy, because we cannot allow tiny group of people to be destroying our own value system in this country.
Well, Executive Director of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, Awal Ibrahim Musa Rafsanjani, thank you for your fight against corruption, and thank you very much for joining us here on Newsday.